Number 1. HMS Warspite. She was a super dreadnought known affectionately as the Grand Old Lady. She had more battle honours than any other ship in the history of the Royal Navy. Commissioned in 1915, she was around 190 metres long, 27 metres wide, could move at 24 knots and weighed around 32,500 tons. She was built to combat the new German battleships that were much faster than previous battleships. On top of greater speed and armour, Warspite also had much bigger guns, 15-inch guns to be exact. At the time, these were the largest rifled guns of their kind anywhere in the world, and Warspite had 8 of them. As well as an impressive array of secondary guns, she had much improved speed, being able to move at 24 knots, which made her the first of the true fast battleships. In May 1916, Warspite joined the Grand Fleet and fought in the Battle of Jutland, the largest naval battle ever. During the battle, her steering jammed and she steamed in circles. This drew German fire away from HMS Warrior and saved Warrior from destruction. She was badly damaged and returned to the UK for repairs, although her steering was never fully fixed. On the 21st of November 1918, Warspite sailed into Scapa Flow to accept the surrender of the German fleet. She was refitted between the wars and once again became the most advanced battleship in the world. At the start of World War II, Warspite sailed to Norway with a small fleet to aid the Norwegian fight against the Germans and arrived in 1940. Her spotter aircraft found and engaged a German submarine, the U-64, which ended up becoming the first German submarine to be sunk by an aircraft in World War II. Warspite and her fleet sank a further 3 German destroyers. In July 1940, the British fleet was engaged in combat with the Italian fleet. During the battle, Warspite scored possibly the longest gunnery hit on a moving target in history. She hit the Italian battleship, the Giulio Cesare, at a range of around 26 kilometres. The Italians withdrew from the battle, and in November 1940, Warspite supported the Battle of Taranto. She would go on to fight in many battles, and her list of honours, just for the Second World War, are the Battle of the Atlantic, Narvik, Norway, Calabria, the Mediterranean, Malta, Matapan, Crete, Sicily, Salerno, the English Channel, Normandy, Biscay, and Walcheren. Or Walcheren? Anyway. She was present at the surrender of the Italian fleet in World War II. She had survived shellfire, bombing, ramming, sea mines, early guided missiles, and the largest naval battle in history. She's thought to have served in more locations in World War II than any other ship in any navy. On the 1st of February 1945, she was decommissioned, and several attempts were made to persuade the Admiralty to make her into a museum ship, but to no avail. Having served 33 years across 2 world wars and earning 15 battle honours, she was sold for scrap in 1947. On the way to the scrap heap, her towing line snapped and she ran aground on the south coast of England. Old crew members say that she refused to be scrapped and tried to make a break for the North Sea. Rescue attempts failed, and the ship with the most battle honours in any ship in the 1,000 years history of the Royal Navy was finally broken up for scrap in 1955. The Grand Old Lady was no more. Number 2. The USS Phoenix. The Phoenix was a Brooklyn-class light cruiser of the United States Navy. She was commissioned in 1938 and conducted various trials to test her seaworthiness, which took her all around South America. Facts and figures time. The USS Phoenix was 180 metres long, 19 metres wide, weighed around 12,000 tons fully loaded, and could travel at 33 knots. Her armament included 15 6-inch guns, 8 5-inch guns, and 8 50 caliber machine guns. By the end of World War II, she had an extra 38 anti-aircraft guns fitted as well. On the 7th of December 1941, the Phoenix was anchored at Pearl Harbor when the Japanese attacked. Moored by herself, she was left alone by the attacking aircraft, who were going for the ships tightly bunched up. Phoenix sent a warning to the other ships and began firing on the planes with her machine guns. Like a real-life Phoenix, she rose from the ashes of Pearl Harbor without a scratch and set off in pursuit of the Japanese Navy. When she couldn't locate the enemy, she returned to port. She spent the majority of the Second World War fighting in the Pacific Theatre. She supported landings and attacks on New Guinea and the Philippines. She took part in the Battle of the... I can never say this correctly. Surigao Strait, itself part of the Battle of the Leyte Gulf. I can't say that properly either. This was the last battle in history in which battleships would fire at each other, and Phoenix herself fired her guns at the Japanese battleship Fuso. She was attacked several times by dive bombers and kamikazes, but never took any serious damage. One attack led to the loss of 1 sailor and 4 wounded. Later in the war, a midget submarine attempted to torpedo her, but both shots missed. In 1946, the USS Phoenix was decommissioned, having received very little damage despite numerous bombs, torpedoes, mines, shells and kamikaze attacks trying to sink her. She earned 9 battle stars serving with the US Navy. In 1951, the Phoenix was sold to Argentina and initially called the 17th of October, known as Loyalty Day in Argentina. In 1956, she was again renamed to the General Belgrano. In early 1982, the Belgrano was involved in the Falklands War, and on the 30th of April she was spotted by the British submarine HMS Conqueror. Conqueror asked for instructions, and the decision was made by the Prime Minister herself that she should be sunk. On the 2nd of May 1982, HMS Conqueror fired 3 torpedoes at the Belgrano. 2 torpedoes hit and ripped a massive hole in her side and knocked out her electrical systems. 20 minutes later, her captain gave the order to abandon ship. Around 770 of her crew were rescued, and 323 were killed in the sinking. Controversy raged around the sinking because she was outside the exclusion zone. Britain considered it an act of war, and even the Belgrano's captain agreed. In 1994, after 12 years of arguing, the Argentine government said it was a legitimate act of war. And so it was that one of the few ships to escape Pearl Harbor unscathed became the only ship in history to be sunk by a nuclear-powered submarine. After 44 years' service in 2 different navies, 9 battle stars in World War II, and taking part in the last gun battle between battleships, the USS Phoenix sank to the bottom of the Atlantic after quite a distinguished career. Number 3. The USS New Jersey. Commissioned in 1943, the USS New Jersey was one of 4 Iowa-class battleships built for the US Navy. Facts and figures time. The USS New Jersey was 270 metres long, 33 metres wide, weighed around 58,000 tons fully loaded, her armour was a foot thick in places, and she could travel at 33 knots. Her guns were 16-inch in diameter, and she had 9 of them. On top of this, she had 25-inch guns and 129 anti-aircraft guns. Various refits saw more modern weapon systems fitted, but we'll get onto that. New Jersey supported various landings and attacks on Japanese-held islands throughout the Pacific, with her main guns destroying airfields, fuel tanks, buildings and bases. Throughout the Pacific theatre, her guns provided much-needed protection to troops against land, sea and air attacks by the Japanese. On the 23rd of October 1940, she sank a Japanese battleship during the Battle of Leyte Gulf. In December that year, she survived a typhoon that sank 3 destroyers. In 1948, she was decommissioned into reserve. She was recommissioned in 1950 to go and fight in Korea. New Jersey would serve 2 tours of Korea and was used to pound North Korean troop positions and defences from the relative safety of the sea. Her guns would go on to destroy a bridge, an ammunition dump and scatter North Korean troops. She spent the majority of the Korean War firing her guns almost constantly. Her destruction list includes bridges, dams, gun emplacements, mortar positions, pillboxes, bunkers, tunnels, railways, ammo dumps, trenches, an oil refinery, trains and even caves. One spotter is quoted as saying, "Beautiful shooting, every shot on target. Most beautiful shooting I've seen in 5 years." After the Korean War, she was decommissioned on the 21st of August 1957. New Jersey was recommissioned on the 6th of April 1968 for Vietnam. By now, she was the world's only actively serving battleship. On the 24th of July 1968, the New Jersey became the first battleship to receive ammunition delivered by helicopter while at sea. Over 6 months, it's estimated that New Jersey fired 10,000 rounds of ammunition at communist targets, with over 3,000 of these being from her main guns. New Jersey finished 1 tour of Vietnam and was due another, but on the 17th of December 1969 she was decommissioned. In 1982 she was recommissioned once more. This time she was modernised and refitted with Harpoon and Tomahawk missiles with ranges up to 500 miles. In 1983, New Jersey was protecting US interests during the Lebanese Civil War. In 1984, she fired at Syrian positions in Lebanon and killed the general commanding the forces there in the heaviest bombardment since the Korean War. She also saw service in the Persian Gulf in 1990 before the outbreak of full hostilities. On the 8th of February 1991, the USS New Jersey was decommissioned for the final time. On the 20th of January 2000, she was made into a museum ship in Camden, New Jersey. The USS New Jersey earned 9 battle stars for World War II, 4 stars for the Korean War, 2 stars for Vietnam, and 3 campaign stars for Lebanon, Beirut, and the Persian Gulf. With a grand total of 19 battle and campaign stars, the USS New Jersey is America's most decorated battleship and the most decorated surviving warship of the United States Navy. Number 4. The USS Constitution. Launched in October 1797, the USS Constitution was one of 6 frigates built by the newly independent and newly formed United States Navy. She was larger and more heavily armed than regular frigates, as the first 6 ships were to be capital ships, a position usually reserved for battleships. When built, she was 63 metres long, 13 metres wide, weighed 2,000 tons, and had a top speed of 13 knots. Bearing in mind, she was a sailing ship. She had around 52 guns, consisting of 24 and 32 pounders. She had a crew of around 450, accompanied by 55 Marines. In 1798, she took part in the Quasi-War with France and captured a French ship, taking her crew prisoner and claiming the ship as a prize. In 1803, Constitution was made flagship of Captain Edward Preble's squadron during the First Barbary War. Preble used 4 warships as leverage to persuade the Sultan of Morocco to release various American ships that he was holding hostage. Later, she took part in the Battle of Tripoli Harbour, and after that she captured 2 Greek ships. At the end of hostilities, a peace treaty with Tripoli was signed on board the Constitution. On the 18th of July 1812, Constitution spent 57 hours being chased by 5 British ships before they gave up the pursuit. In August that year, she battled and defeated the British frigate HMS Gruyere. Most of the British shots had bounced off, which led a crew member to exclaim, "Her sides are made of iron," and thus she acquired the nickname of Old Ironsides. She wasn't actually an iron-sided vessel, just a very strong oak hull. In December 1812, Constitution fought HMS Java. During the battle, Constitution's wheel was smashed and the crew had to steer her using the tiller. Eventually, the captain of the Java surrendered, and Java was burnt, but only after they'd taken her wheel and fitted it to Constitution. By the year 1830, there were rumours that Constitution was to be scrapped, which caused outrage and efforts were made to restore her. By 1835, 2 of her sister ships, the Chesapeake and the President, had been captured, and another ship, the Congress, was scrapped. In 1848, she received Pope Pius IX. This was the first time a pope set foot on American soil, or the equivalent of. In 1854, she took an American slave trader ship as a prize, and this was the last time she would capture another vessel. On the 14th of June 1854, she was decommissioned from frontline service. During the Civil War, she became a training ship at Portsmouth Navy Yard in the United States. Only one of her sister ships remained, known as the United States. She was captured by Confederate forces. This left Constitution as the only one of the original 6 ships of the US Navy. In 1867, the last of her original crew died. In 1897, her centenary was celebrated, but her future was uncertain. She was first opened as a museum ship in 1907. Having been a barrack ship and training vessel for many years, she was returned to her fighting condition in 1927 and recommissioned in 1931. In the mid-1990s, she had the largest refit of her career using scanning technology unavailable in previous refits. In 1997, she celebrated her bicentenary by sailing unassisted for the first time in 116 years and recorded a speed of 6 knots. She is currently maintained at her 1812 format, and the original timber used in her construction in 1797 is estimated to be around 15% left. Her modern-day crew are serving officers and sailors of the US Navy, and she is the oldest commissioned warship of any navy still sailing anywhere in the world, 221 years after she first set sail. Number 5. HMS Victory. Most famous for being at the Battle of Trafalgar in 1805, the history of HMS Victory goes back a bit further than that. She was launched in 1765 but wasn't commissioned until 1778. At launch, she was around 60 metres long, 16 metres wide, weighed around 2,000 tons, and had a crew of around 850. She was designated as a 104-gun first-rate ship of the line. In 1778, Victory was the flagship at the Battle of Ouchan. I'm assuming that's how it's pronounced, it's French. The result was indecisive, but the second Battle of Ouchan in 1780 was a victory for the Royal Navy and HMS Victory. In 1782, HMS Victory helped break the siege of Gibraltar against the French and Spanish without even firing a shot. In 1797 she was sailing into the Battle of Cape St. Vincent. Tales tell of how the Victory's broadside scared one Spanish ship so much that it ran from the battle. From 1800 to 1803 she was extensively repaired after over 20 years of fighting service. On the 21st of October 1805, HMS Victory would sail into the history books as the flagship that broke the French and Spanish fleets for good. Outnumbered 41 ships to 33, the Royal Navy had an uphill struggle. Victory's first broadside crippled the French ship Bucentaure after weathering fire from 4 different enemy ships for 40 minutes. During a melee with the French ship Redoutable, a musket ball from the mizzen top of Redoutable punctured Nelson's left shoulder and went through his spine. With the Admiral wounded, the French tried to board the Victory but were pushed back by fire from HMS Temeraire. Victory was so badly damaged after the battle that she had to be towed to Gibraltar by HMS Neptune for repairs. After this, Nelson's body was brought back to England on board the Victory for burial in 1806. Years of battle had taken their toll, and in 1807 Victory was made a second-rate ship of the line. She would serve as a troop ship, a floating depot, and a prison ship for a few years. She was recommissioned in 1817 as a first-rate ship, but didn't see any fighting, and in 1831 was almost broken up for salvage. A public outcry saved her demolition, but then she was largely forgotten. In 1833, a certain Princess Victoria visited the ship to meet veterans of Trafalgar. Suddenly everyone wanted to visit HMS Victory, and so much foot traffic caused damage that eventually sprang a leak in 1887, which nearly sank her. In 1889 she was made into a naval school of telegraphy, and this only changed in 1904 when it was moved to another ship, and in 1906 to the Royal Naval Barracks, Portsmouth. In 1903 she was accidentally rammed by the successor to the ship that had towed her to safety after Trafalgar, HMS Neptune, and only intervention from King Edward VII himself prevented her scrapping. Restoration work began in 1922 but was halted during World War II. In 1941 a Luftwaffe bomb damaged the Victory, and the Germans claimed to have destroyed her. In the 1950s she was found to be suffering with Death Watch beetle, so steps had to be taken to prevent further spread. In 2012 HMS Victory was made the flagship of the First Sea Lord. Today she is maintained by the defence contractor BAE Systems, the same contractor that maintains the Royal Navy's modern destroyers, aircraft carriers, and even helped build the new F-35 fighter jet. For 250 years, HMS Victory has survived the French fleet, the Spanish fleet, cannon fire, musket fire, storms, ramming, Death Watch beetle, rotting timbers, and even World War II bombing raids. She's the oldest commissioned warship anywhere in the world, and it's safe to say that the Royal Navy is rather attached to the old girl.